Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this week's weekly wrap. It's Mirko Kagura and myself, Luke Harris, on the screen. How are you, Mirko?
Good, mate. How are you?
I'm going really, really well, mate. I'm going really, really well. Have you had a good day so far?
I kept forgetting it was Friday, being a shorter week. We had Tuesday off, so yeah, nice to get to the end of the week. It's been a great day. We had a bit of a leadership meeting, as you well know, this morning, just to sort of check in, see how everything's going and whatnot. So always useful to turn the phones off and have a bit of a think about how things are traveling and where we're winning the game and where we need to do better and what's going on going forward. So it was nice. It was good.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. We call it the aggregation of marginal gain. Those incremental improvements. If we can try and do that, then we're
You
doing
know,
well.
you know what I call it? The aggregation of now I've got more work to do. Thanks very much out of the meeting. Beautiful.
Fair enough, too, mate. Now, Mirko, it's been a crazy, crazy week on the markets. I think outside of yesterday, when the market showed a bit of green, we were 7 days on the trot in the red.
Yeah.
It looks like investors are looking for any excuse to exit left, but the market keeps on drawing them back in. How are we going today, mate?
Yeah, so we're a bit off today. What are we? It's 2 p.m., couple of hours to go, and the All Ords is off about 0.5% today. And I think what we've seen playing out basically is a bit of a rotation out of the tech sector and perhaps looking at other alternatives to allocate capital. As we know, the tech sector's been running pretty hot, and valuations have continued to rise and rise, and every now and then there's a bit of a shift out of that sector into other areas of the economy. And if we look at, say, the Nasdaq specifically, we're off over 2% with the Nasdaq. So in the 4 days of trading we've had in the US, there was a -2 day and a -1.3 day. So it's been sort of pretty hectic on that front. So it's not unusual. I still think that investors draw a line in the sand and go, how have I gone in the last 6 and 12 months? You're not going to be too disappointed with portfolios. As we know, they don't always continue going in the north direction. And so we've seen a bit of a rotation there in Australia for the week where, we talk about red, we're only off 1.3% for the week so far. And in the US, the S&P 500's off 1.3. So a little bit of news in Australia that we were paying attention to on Cup Day on Tuesday. The Reserve Bank doesn't believe in public holidays for horse racing, and I can't argue with that. So they had the RBA meeting and they elected to keep interest rates on hold. So
I
yeah,
saw that.
yeah. So look, I don't think there was too many surprises because what we received a couple of weeks ago is the September quarter inflation data that showed that inflation had actually spiked up. So I think the minute that data came out, the chances of a rate cut were straight out the window. And I think that sentiment sort of suggests that we probably won't see another rate cut this year. So there's another meeting due in December. And maybe if we're lucky, we'll get a rate cut next year. Having said that, there is a little bit of murmurings of don't be too convinced that it'll be a rate cut. Who's to say it doesn't go the other way? So, uh, so, so watch this space. Listening to the language of Michelle Bullock, very interesting. I was talking to a prominent fund manager the other day in a meeting discussing the fixed income markets, and they watch presentations by central bankers like Hawks, and they said the body language was so typical of an economist. It was a bit of this and a bit of that, and it was like a bit of an each way bet. And I get a sense that the Reserve Bank is actually giving us that type of narrative as well, very much about we'll keep an eye on the data. We're not going to sort of make any predictions about what happens next and the like. We'll very much be driven by the data. So I think that that leaves things up in the air a little bit. And one thing that they're certainly concerned about is the inflation and whether that is sticky. I think we'll probably see a bigger, better picture post the Christmas period to see what inflation actually looks like.
Yeah, look, it's funny at the moment because when you're walking into the supermarkets, when you're walking into stores and stuff like that, there are noticeable differences in prices for a lot of things that you're buying, and I mean that on the up. For people who are receiving their insurance renewals at the moment, being car, being house, being whatever, we're talking premium rises of 10, 15, 20% in some cases. So that sort of inflation is really sticky, Mirko, in the sense that it's sitting around and it's causing prices to rise. But if you walk out into the world out there from that point of view, it's not as rosy as the prices or higher prices would suggest. So the RBA is caught in this conundrum between what appears to be a slowing economy on one side, yet a very sticky inflationary environment on the other side. And that's a challenge. And we're starting to see the same in the United States in the absence of data, albeit in the absence of data. So we've got to give them a bit of credit. But we're starting to see a bit of pressure there from that point of view as well. So look, I'm not surprised markets have been doing what they're doing. Markets feel a little bit directionless at the moment in the sense that they're looking for signs and they're looking for signals. And the signs and signals are all over the place, which probably explains why we've seen some down days, we've seen some up days. Nothing dramatic. It's been 1% here, 1% there, but it's nonetheless, it's just there's a bit more volatility than what there was, let's say, 3 or 4 weeks ago.
100%, 100%. And as an example, I don't pay too much attention to grocery shopping. I'm fortunate that I don't have to worry about that. But I did pop into Nespresso last night to pick up. I'm a bit low on my capsules for the machine at home.
Yep.
And I realised that my favourite drop, the In Vivo Lungo, the orange one, was 95 cents a capsule. And I actually said to my wife last night, I said, I'm sure that had a 7 in the number not that long ago. So inflation is certainly real, and yeah, coffee prices have certainly spiked up, as we've seen when you go and buy a coffee at your local coffee shop.
Yeah, no, look, I'm hearing you. And I know the reason why I raised the insurance piece for you before was November in our house is that tragic month where all the insurance policies tend to fall due. So throw 5 cars, throw registrations, throw house insurance and all that kind of stuff, and it's an ugly month. But we've moved from ugly to horrific. You're just sitting there going like, oh my Lord. But one thing I will say, if you're prepared to get on the phone and make a few calls, one of the great things about the Melbourne Cup is, whilst Melbourne is shut down, the rest of the country is still open. So I use the day for some good in the sense of making a few phone calls and so on. You can save yourself, 10, 15, 20% by being a little bit more frugal and being a bit more prudent. So I think there is some merit in picking up the phone and doing those sorts of things. The thing that really bothers me at the moment is that loyalty's gone out the window. And this attraction of new clients seems to be the way to go, where I think if you served your existing client base a little bit better and looked after them, maybe they wouldn't leave and you wouldn't have to attract the new stuff. But who am I to figure that stuff out?
Yeah, we're loyalty out the window. Agreed.
Yeah, no. Now, mate, there was some big news in the United States overnight. US national debt passed 38 trillion US dollars, or 58 trillion Australian dollars.
Aussie dollars. Wow.
Yeah, just the sheer magnitude of that. And then you look at their GDP, you look at how much their economy produces and so on. They physically can't pay back that debt full stop. They're at that point of tipping over, in theory. When you look at it, you kind of go, well, how long do you remain solvent for? How do they fix this?
How do you even write a trillion? It's actually 12 zeros for those that maths nerds like me. So yeah, 12 zeros on the end. You can't fathom that, and you're completely right. Every now and then we talk about the levels of debt that we're seeing, and at a country level globally, and it gets a bit of a mention. But at some point in time, you're 100% right. Money's going to need to be paid back. I don't think we've seen a situation where they said, "Don't worry about the 50 odd trillion. It's all forgiven. We start a clean slate." I've been waiting for my bank to call me on that for a long time, but yeah, no such phone calls. They must have lost my number.
No, I'm hearing you, mate. I'm hearing you. The other thing there too is, and I guess this is the point. You look at the government, or you look at the policy settings in the United States, where they're actually talking about tax cuts and whatever from that point of view and all that. And I understand the theory of trickle down economics and whatever, but the reality there is, we're seeing American companies at this particular point in time slashing jobs. So, just in the month of October, 150,000 jobs were slashed in the United States. And that's the largest level of lost jobs in October in over 2 decades. So so the American economy is not going too well, and at the same time you're slashing taxes. So if you're slashing taxes, they're not collecting the revenue, profits are down from that point of view, hence less revenue being collected from a tax point in the first place. This debt's just getting wider and wider and wider. I just don't understand what the end game is, and unfortunately, in this era of politics, I'm not sure this is being considered as being a major problem as what it is in truth.
Well, I do know that there's one individual, Luke, that I'm sure you're going to be able to name for me that if things go his way and the share price goes the way it needs to go, he could potentially pay off 2.5% of the US national debt in one go by selling his shares. What do you reckon?
Yeah, well, Mr. Musk, I've got to give him credit. He, today, I believe, received approval for his salary package today. Which effectively means that the shareholders have effectively signed off on the first human trillionaire. Congratulations, Mr. Musk. That is an extraordinary achievement. I'm just trying to fathom the amount of money that he's receiving in terms of his wealth and whatever from that point of view. And the second part there is I sit back and think, given global debts, given where we're at, given the amount of money that he has, one, what does he do with all that money? And could that money be used for other purposes and for the betterment of society in some way or form? Because you're just kind of looking at this at the moment, it just seems like this disparity between the haves and the have-nots is just getting wider and wider and wider. And the fact that shareholders approve this, all credit to Elon. The shareholders have said clearly...
It wasn't even a close vote. 75% of the shareholders hit the approval button on there. And so for those that aren't familiar with this story, it doesn't just come. They don't just hand it over to him, but he's got some pretty lofty hurdles that he has to hit along the way. So at the moment, the market capitalization of Tesla, not Telstra, Tesla is $1.54 trillion. If he hits the following targets, getting the market capitalization of the stock to 2 trillion, 6.5 trillion, and 8.5 trillion, Elon Musk will land himself $1 trillion worth of equity in Tesla, which is an extraordinary number. What I did find interesting is that shareholders, they're excited by this because they've sort of said, here's the carrot. If we dangle this in front of him, it's going to drive the share price. But one of the things that needs to be considered, somewhere down the track, there'll be a significant dilution if $1 trillion worth of stock is issued as well. But no one's sort of paying too much attention to that in the short term.
Yeah, I think the other thing there too is, are we just measuring him on the increase in valuation, or are we actually measuring him on the good that he might do for broader society, for his employees, for his workforce, and for all those sorts of things? So, if you look at your scorecard effectively, and we've all been employees, we've all, when we've worked and all that kind of stuff, everyone has a scorecard. It feels like in Elon's case, it's very much driven by the money side and what the capital value is versus those other incidental pieces. And you kind of sit there and you kind of look at the shareholders and you go, well, okay, if that's all we're measuring and that's all we're valuing, it's any wonder that the world is in the current predicament that it is at this moment in time. Because we seem to have lost the moral compass on everything else outside of the dollar, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, look, it certainly seems that way. We've managed to put a price tag and a dollar sign against everything and leave everything else to the marketing department. That seems how the world rolls these days.
It does, which is then ironic if you think about the election result in the United States over the last couple of days. So we've had, in New York in particular, we have a socialist Democrat get elected to the position of governor from that point of view, Mandani, and Donald Trump was opposed to him from that point of view. We've seen the Democrats have a clean sweep across the board from that point of view, and it probably highlights two things. There seems to be a disconnect between corporate and the real world. And we often talk about Wall Street and Real Street in terms of the difference there. So there seems to be a disconnect there because obviously the voters are looking at other things. And the fact that the Democrats have had a clean sweep, notwithstanding that you may like Trump or not like Trump, but they won elections in Virginia, they won elections in New Jersey, and these were previously Trump strongholds. But
They
I guess the
certainly
question
have.
that they're all yeah. But the question that's coming out of that is a lot of them are looking at cost of living, a lot of them are looking at fairness, a lot of them are looking at equity and so on. And then when you hear about salary packages of this magnitude, you're kind of going, well, that runs contrary to what the world is feeling at the moment. So you can see how you've got this yin and yang. You've got corporate, and then you've got the real world.
That is so much the case, and Zoran Mandani has come out with some bold statements and things like rent freezes in New York, and it was all based on it's just not fair that the big corporates are killing the little guys, and the David Goliath was basically the election campaign that was run here, and a very successful one at that.
Yeah, look. One thing I did have a listen to a couple of his speeches and so on, and he speaks wonderfully well. I've got to give him that. So the Democrats have unearthed somebody who can actually speak and talk and be able to articulate in a way which is easily to condense and appreciate. In saying that, some of the ideas are radical. Some of the ideas, like for people who are proponents of free markets, you are looking at this going, like if all of a sudden we got rent freezes and so on, it then begs the question: why would you own a property in New York? Why would you be an investor of any sort from that point of view? The angst towards billionaires. We've got to be really careful here that we don't go and shoot the tall poppy. We don't want to remove people's industrial flair. We don't want to take away incentive out of the system either. So it is a fine balance. But I think Mandani, based upon the arguments, he's arguing, saying we need to bring back some balance. And it's hard to argue that. And clearly the voters are saying the same thing, given he won in a canter.
Oh, easy, yeah. He smashed them.
Yeah, no, he did. Now, interestingly, Nancy Pelosi, the 85-year-old stalwart who's been running the Democrats, and she's been the Speaker in the House. And if you remember, she played that wonderful role behind Donald Trump in his first State of the Union when she actually tore up the speech behind him, which probably started this whole kerfuffle between, this divisiveness that we see. She's finally announced the decision to retire. She's clearly accumulated enough money. I think she's worth well over 150 million, so she's fine from what I can understand.
I think at 85 you have the right to sort of go, I've had enough. I really can't turn up to work tomorrow. And but yeah, no, she's certainly been a stalwart in Washington, that's for sure.
Now, and one last thing, I guess, from an Australian perspective, because our focus has been very much on the US up until now, the Liberal Party and Susan Ley, clearly it looks like that the knives are out and they're going for it from that point of view. And it looks like we could have a replacement of leader before Christmas. And usually the 2 weeks out from Christmas is usually the killing season. They refer to it as in politics. Like her or loathe her, it really doesn't matter from that point of view, but it says a lot about the Libs at the moment, given that they can't even stand behind a leader at the moment and come up with a collective, that they're so focused on themselves that they're not even bothered about the country. This is what's happened in Victoria. We don't have an opposition. We don't want this to occur at a federal level, for God's sake.
Well, it's certainly happening at a federal level as well, because it is quite an embarrassment that the opposition can't come up with an agreed leader, an agreed mandate, and a way forward to at least be, live up to your namesake, and that is to be an opposition. And all we get, unfortunately, is infighting and the rest of it. And the Albo and his crew would be sitting there having a great old chuckle over a glass of wine. I reckon they'd be like, "How good are these headlines? We don't actually have to say or do anything. Our ratings just keep going up."
No, absolutely, mate, absolutely. And the other thing there too, I guess, from that point of view, which is probably disappointing in all this, in the sense that you kind of, this whole argument centres around net zero and whether or not we should be aiming for net zero or not from that perspective. And clearly on the Labor side, they've got a unified front at this particular moment in time. They're heading down one particular direction. But in the Liberal Party, this has been the cause of all chaos, actually in the coalition, with the Nationals now backing right out of net zero, Barnaby Joyce leaving the party as a result of net zero, and for God's sake, this whole thing. And, you know, if you think about the environment, if you think about net zero, if you think about this whole debate, since 2007, the amount of political careers that have been killed on the back of this discussion, from Gillard through to Rudd, through to Abbott, through to Turnbull, through to, the list goes on and on and on and on. And it's just like, for God's sake, it can't be this hard to come up with a coherent policy, in the sense that we need to clearly do what's right for the country, but we also need to have a role in the broader world in terms of the role that we play. Because this whole argument about the fact that, we shouldn't be doing anything, or it's not our responsibility, given that there's other people doing other things from that point of view. If everybody takes that view, then the world ends up in a bad spot, or a worse spot than what it currently is. And from what I can tell, environmentally and climate-wise, things are changing. No matter how you look at it, it just kind of feels that it's not like what it used to be 20 years ago.
No, because the ski season was going the first week of October this year, if I'm not mistaken. Things are certainly changing. Maybe the Liberal Party is sitting there and they're all trying to work out what net zero actually means. Like when if you remember being a kid at school. I don't know if you remember being, a young fella at school, and the maths teacher for the first time ever introduced negative numbers to you, and your head fell off your shoulders, like going, "What do you mean negative numbers?" Right? Maybe that's what's going on there. They just can't get their heads around it.
Or what about when you had the -3, and then it became -6, and you kind of, how'd that work?
It's very intense. Yeah.
Look, I'm hearing it.
I remember very early in my financial advising career saying to a client, I must have used the terminology negative returns. And the guy looked at me and said, "They're not negative returns, they're losses, mate. They're not returns." And I said, "Yeah, that's fair. That is fair. I'll never forget that."
Yeah, but when you can always put your head on, but we lost less than you did. So there you go.
Correct.
Not a great place to be, mate. Now, mate, Melbourne Cup this week, it was a pretty awesome carnival from what I can tell. I don't really pay attention to horses, but it was nice to see Jamie Mellon win the Cup. So backing up for the Cup double, Caulfield and Melbourne. Nice to see a young lady win that thing and navigate what is essentially a male-dominated sport.
Oh, amazing effort by her to win not just the Melbourne Cup, but you're right, also the Caulfield Cup double, and and a bit of Aussie pride, bit of green and gold action there, because that horse was the only Aussie horse in the race. The rest were bred overseas and everything. And if I'm not mistaken, that's the first horse that's been bred in Victoria in a very long time to win a Melbourne Cup. So let's go Victoria. We got something to hang our hats on now. We're happy about this.
And bought relatively cheaply, I might add. It wasn't like overly expensive. Like you hear about horses of millions to 5 million, 10 million, whatever. From that point of view, I think this horse just cost close to $300,000. So it wasn't anything, which is a lot of money. Don't get me wrong, but relative to what you could spend on a horse, crazy amounts of money being spent there, I dare say.
It is insane, and the amount of money that changes hands as a result of this week, in fact, is just incredible. Actually, incredibly sad on many fronts too, because usually the people that can least afford to spend money on it do.
Yeah, that's true. Now, in some really good news and some great news for our loved travellers, and we know our clients love to travel a lot. It looks like the major airlines are all announcing discounts to Europe, and you can now pick up tickets to Europe for just under $1,300, I believe, which is a far cry from where we were, 12 months ago. 12 months ago, the standard ticket was $2,400 to $2,800, and that was sitting at the back of the plane, and I mean right at the back, in the back of the as the plane came back in the narrow section from that end. So it looks like we're getting some normality, bit of competition for Qantas, who surprisingly came out with their own sales at this moment in time. So for our international travellers out there who are looking to travel, if you were thinking about booking, now's probably a good time to have a look, I reckon. What about you, Mick? Are you going away?
Well, that was a topic today in our board meeting. We were talking about having to go up north to visit some clients up in Queensland, and trying to get a domestic airfare that doesn't destroy your budget is ridiculous. And it just feels like the airlines are still getting away with murder. And I dare say you picked the wrong weekend and the wrong day. It'll cost you more to get to Brisbane than it will to Europe on those $1,300 flights. So we desperately need that little bit of competition here. I don't know if you saw the other announcement that Qantas made the other day. They're rolling out these new A350s. I don't think it'll be next year. I think it'll be in 2027, and they're
Hmm.
ultra long range flights that are going to fly direct from Sydney to London or Sydney to New York. So we're talking 22 hours on a plane non-stop. Wow. I don't
Yeah,
know if I'd be up. I'm not sure that I'd be up for not being able to stretch my legs for 22 hours.
mate, I've done 16. I've done 16 hours, and that is a long, long flight. Because there's only so many episodes of a series you can watch. There's only so much airplane food that you can eat, and I think there's a limit on how many sleeping tablets one can have in a 24-hour period as well. So you've got to be really careful.
Imagine being stuck next to a pack a day smoker on one of those flights, and then the shakes that they would have. Oh
Oh
no.
no, look, it wouldn't be good, mate. Wouldn't be good. All right, mate. What have you got planned this weekend? Anything exciting?
I was told last night, because I get told by my social director, that we have no plans for Saturday and Saturday night. So I'm really excited to be sitting at home on the couch and relaxing this weekend. What about yourself?
Oh, Meg. Well, we've got a 50th. So a darling friend of ours, Ange, is turning 50, and she's been a very important person in our life for many, many years. And so we're looking forward to celebrating and toasting her wonderful success of 50 years of well lived, and hopefully another 50 to follow. So we'll be doing that on Saturday, and Sunday, I dare say, might be yeah, it might be a little bit slower, given that the head might be a little bit raw, I dare say, from the Saturday's
Well,
festivities.
well, happy birthday, Ange, and I do know her husband, and if he's in fine form like he usually is, that's going to be a big 50th celebration.
It will be. It will be. All right. Well, look, mate, you have a wonderful week and enjoy the quietness of yours. We'll make sure we have a great one. To all our wonderful clients out there, have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Enjoy. I believe the weather isn't going to be absolutely fantastic, but when you do get a chance, get out there and have some fun. To our wonderful team here at Innate, thank you as always for doing the wonderful work that you do, and we will see you all next week. Take care, guys.
See you guys. Bye.